Donald Trump's dark past continues to surface with the death of Jeffrey Epstein's top recruiter in France. That's right, this past week, Daniel Siad, the so-called modeling scout and recruiter for Jeffrey Epstein for several years, was found dead in his home in Paris. Siad was under investigation by French authorities for his role in allegedly facilitating Epstein's sex trafficking ring and for claims that he himself had committed sexual assault. Katie Phang from the MeidasTouch network has been on the front lines, quite literally on the front lines, fighting the Trump regime, exposing Donald Trump's dark past. She brought the first of its kind Epstein Transparency Act lawsuit against Donald Trump's despicable DOJ, which has itself become a criminal racketeering enterprise working with Trump and the MAGA Republicans to cover up child sex trafficking rings here in the United States. Katie Phang won a big motion, a big injunction for Todd Blanche to turn over the Epstein files. Todd Blanche is still resisting, but Katie Phang filed a motion before the federal judge in Washington, D.C. We're waiting for a ruling. Hat tip for Katie Phang for her incredible courage. Now, one of the documents or categories of documents that Katie Phang identified in her lawsuit are these foreign records that the Trump regime has refused to turn over. Remember, a lot of the trafficking, of course, occurred from overseas, Eastern Europe, and Jeffrey Epstein had a network of recruiters and traffickers from Eastern Europe. And so we know there's a lot of documents like that in the Epstein files that the Trump regime is simply saying that they're not turning over these foreign records, these foreign documents. They don't want to do the translation. They said it's going to be too difficult. No, turn over the damn documents pursuant to the Epstein Transparency Act. And a federal judge agreed with Katie Phang, release those documents. Why are you hiding all of these documents about Eastern European women and girls and all of those types of documents of Epstein's recruiters that may indeed be in the files that are foreign language documents? Now, Katie Phang did an incredible breakdown, and you should all subscribe to Katie Phang's YouTube channel. Let's get Katie Phang 1 million subscribers. Her YouTube channel's absolutely taking off right now, but she did an incredible breakdown for the MeidasTouch network and for her channel about Daniel Siad being found dead in his home in Paris under incredibly mysterious circumstances. The same way Jean-Luc Brunel, one of Epstein's other traffickers, was found dead a few years ago as well in Paris, the way Epstein was found dead. Seems like all of these people are being found dead just like Epstein under very odd and mysterious circumstances with massive red flags. Here's what Katie Phang had to say about Daniel Siad. Let's play this clip.
Alrighty, we have some breaking news out of Paris. Daniel Siad, the long-time modeling scout, and I'll put that in quotes, recruiter for not only Jeffrey Epstein, but for Jean-Luc Brunel and Gerald Marie, was found dead in his home on Monday, according to French authorities. Siad, at the time, age 69, discovered by his roommate, is how the French media are referring to her. She is only 28 years old. She found his body in the kitchen. She alerted the neighbors, who then had the authorities arrive. Rescuers tried to resuscitate Siad on the scene, but were unable to do so. An investigation has actually now been launched as of Monday night into Siad's death, according to the Nanterre prosecutor's office, with an autopsy that will be carried out as a part of this probe into his cause of death. Now, Daniel Siad, if you put in the word Siad, S-I-A-D, his name appears 2,090 times in the as redacted, as released Epstein files that the Trump DOJ has put out. And his name, or Daniel Siad, communicated in more than 1,000 documents that have been released in the Epstein files. And again, that's just what's been released by the Trump DOJ. Siad was already under a criminal investigation based on the allegations that he was facilitating this international sex trafficking ring of not only Jeffrey Epstein, but others. As I mentioned, he not only worked for Epstein, but he worked for Epstein's close friend and business associate, Jean-Luc Brunel. Recall, Epstein and Brunel launched MC2 Modeling, and it was financed by Jeffrey Epstein, run by Jean-Luc Brunel. And then Gerald Marie. If that name sounds familiar, it's because I just reported to you last week that I went to a French court when 6 new victims filed complaints against Gerald Marie for sex trafficking, rape, assault, and other violent offenses. I mean, it sounds to me like the common denominator between Epstein, Brunel, and Marie at a minimum was, past tense, Daniel Siad. But that's a problem, folks. The fact that it's a past tense verb that I have to use really troubles me, because according to French media reporting, Siad, under investigation, his case having been assigned to a special unit that deals with this type of trafficking, turns out they had yet to interview him. I'm going to repeat this. French authorities had yet to interview Siad, despite the fact that months ago, earlier this year, in February of 2026, they interviewed a Swedish woman, Ebba Carlson, who recognized Siad based upon his picture being released in the Epstein files. She claims that Siad took her from the south of France and Monaco to Paris, where she was then sexually assaulted by Gerald Marie. Again, people, the connections are too deep and just too much there to have ignored. So let's just get into some of the specifics about the connection to Jeffrey Epstein, because I think it's incredibly important to let people understand the depth by which this relationship went between these two men, and why it's incredibly frustrating now to learn that Siad is dead and investigators had yet to question him.
So then Katie Phang in her analysis really starts to break down what was going on here and why Siad and this network of traffickers and the investigation into Siad is so important. Play this clip.
So if you look at the Epstein files, Daniel Siad was one of the most loyal correspondents. That's the phrase that The Guardian used to describe Daniel Siad. Siad remaining in regular contact with Epstein until months before he died. He also received regular wire payments from Jeffrey Epstein. Now, he went on modeling scouting visits all over the world, focusing on places like Eastern Europe, Sweden, also going to places like Havana, Cuba. He was looking for young women, frankly, girls really at this rate, for Epstein to meet, to be introduced to. As I mentioned, Daniel Siad also worked as a modeling scout for Jean-Luc Brunel. Jean-Luc Brunel, who opened MC2 Modeling with Jeffrey Epstein, relied on Epstein for the financing for that modeling business that was based out of the United States, but also had hubs in Paris and all over the world. Brunel was the leading modeling agent in Paris, New York, and Miami for more than 4 decades. Jean-Luc Brunel was not the only person that Daniel Siad scouted for. He also scouted for Gerald Marie, the former head of Elite Models. And Gerald Marie, the subject of that complaint, or the 6 new complaints that were filed in the French court last week, in order to prosecute him by the investigating judge, that special role here in the French judicial system, a judge who has the subpoena power, questioning power, the ability to be the true investigator into things. Gerald Marie being the target of those particular complaints. That also includes the amazing supermodel American Carrie Otis. So Epstein and Brunel, again, working very closely with this MC2 model management company. So Siad is working as this modeling scout, running all over the world. And for example, he wrote to Jeffrey Epstein in 2009 that he went to Slovakia. He said he had 45 women was the word that Siad used, let me be clear, to see there. He then tells Epstein that he was going to spend the summer scouting small villages in the Czech Republic, Poland, and Hungary. What does Epstein respond to him with? How much using a $sign instead of a question mark at the end. How much? How much for what, Jeffrey Epstein? And Daniel Siad, how come you're not writing back saying, what do you mean, how much? It wasn't just a fee for services rendered, people, right? I mean, we're not stupid in terms of what was going on here. Now, Epstein wasn't particularly loquacious. He wasn't particularly verbose with Siad. Epstein would send messages, what about new girls? Things like, any news? How about anything worth coming to Paris for? Or any interesting women? That's the type of questions that were posed by Epstein to Siad during the course of their relationship. Now, Siad, defending himself, claiming, I had no idea. Doesn't that sound familiar? That's what they all say. I had no idea what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. I was doing legitimate model scouting for Epstein, and I would bring them to meet Jeffrey in places like Paris to do casting sessions. And when they were done, I would take them back to wherever they came. Siad stating the following, quote, he, as in Epstein, had a big apartment in Paris where he used to organize all his meetings, including casting for models I recruited, ready, for Victoria's Secret and MC2. That's per a statement that Siad emailed to The Guardian. Quote, the casting time would not last more than 10 minutes. I always left the place with the models immediately. Let's stop right there. Victoria's Secret, Leslie Wexner, you know, the guy who was like, I didn't know anything. I have no idea. You know, I just let him, manage my money and do all this other stuff. Really? Now remember, and MC2, we already talked about, right? That's John Lee Grinnell. Think about this, people. Again, this is the reason why I believe that it's the international modeling angle that gave so much credibility and cover for people like Epstein to be able to continue his outrageous international sex trafficking ring. Why? Well, because again, you don't question it if a young girl under the age of 18 is traveling for purposes of modeling, because there were a lot of young girls, right, that were going and doing this. And so it's just a really kind of horrific theme here that we're seeing that came out of this modeling scout that this guy Daniel Siad proved to be. Now, let's talk about Ebba Carlson for a second. Remember, I just said she recognized Siad from photographs that were released in the Epstein files by the Trump DOJ. So she came forward, and then earlier this year, she met with Parisian law enforcement. She filed criminal allegations of rape and human trafficking against him in Paris, his lawyer denying that Siad even knew who Ebba Carlson was. Now, another woman reporting to Le Parisien, another French media outlet, and she was referred to as Malika in that report. Malika telling French police in 2022, that Daniel Siad approached her and that he was procuring women for Jeffrey Epstein for sexual reasons. She said he walked up to her on a street in Paris in 2013 when she was just 23 years old, told her she could become a model, and that he knew this rich financier from New York who could hook her up and help her out. A few days later, she was introduced to Jeffrey Epstein in his Parisian apartment. He hired her as, you guessed it, a masseuse. Daniel Siad later telling Malika that she should be out recruiting more girls for Epstein, but the French police took no action, according to Malika in an interview with Le Parisien. In addition, the Epstein files setting out that Epstein was forwarding money to the tune of thousands upon thousands of dollars to Daniel Siad.
More from Katie Phang right here, really breaking down everything. Powerful, powerful stuff. Let's play it.
Look, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that there was something totally awry that was going on here. And the connection between all of these sexual predators, from Epstein to Marie to, Brunel, it's an inescapable thing. And yet I don't blame some of the victims and some of the survivors for being angry about this now happening. Siad's death being suspicious. The timing is weird, don't you think? After those 6 complaints came forward last week, albeit we reported it here, we talked about it here at Katie Phang News, I thought it was important to share it with you so that you understood what was going on. A few days later, he's dead. Now, I don't know if there was any wrongdoing that occurred. I think it's good that the French authorities are looking into it, but think about how long justice has been eluding and evading the victims and the survivors. And we don't even get any action being done by the Trump DOJ. We have an acting attorney general on Todd Blanche who is rude and dismissive and disrespectful to the Epstein survivors, and that he tells them, I can't do anything. I can't investigate. You have to bring me a perfectly packaged thing of evidence with sworn testimony, corroboration. And if you don't, I can't do anything for you. That's bullshit, folks. I'm telling you, as a former prosecutor, that's not how it works. So you can imagine time is not of help. The passage of time is hurting the ability to be able to prosecute these cases. For example, Ebba Carlson's report to the French authorities about Daniel Siad was time barred because of the statute of limitations. That is why this opportunity to use an investigating judge, a juge, d'instruction, this investigating judge here, in France, the ability to use that judge to be able to link all of these worlds together, including to be able to get to Ghislaine Maxwell, a French citizen, is so important. But a very important connecting link is now dead. So I hope that the French authorities are now going to not delay looking into what is going on, because look, you can't prosecute a dead person in France, and you can't even go after that dead person's estate in France. Just like Jean-Luc Brunel died under suspicious circumstances of hanging in a prison cell, just like Jeffrey Epstein allegedly hanged himself in a prison cell. We now have Daniel Siad, who allegedly died from cardiac arrest. I mean, you need the French authorities to haul ass to really start investigating this, because again, time is no friend to victims and survivors of sexual assault. I also wanted to talk about the following. A former model telling BBC, to kind of underscore my point to you, she gave a deposition to the French police in June of this year as a part of the investigation that has been done into Siad. But this is what she said about the fact that he is now dead. Quote, an important link in the chain has just vanished into thin air without there ever having been a chance to recover the information Daniel Siad might have possessed, given that he was never questioned. Too much time has been lost, and it is yet another way for the leads to go cold. I hope we won't have to wait another 7 years to see his home searched, even though I think it is already too late. And I have to agree. Look, if the investigation into Siad's death is going to be into the manner and the cause of death, then I certainly hope the investigation that was going on into his, the allegations of him sexually assaulting women, him facilitating the trafficking by Epstein, Brunel, and Marie, I hope that the French police continue to do that in spite of Siad being dead. But maybe the kind of silver lining from this happening with Siad dying on Monday night is that the investigating judge gets assigned more quickly in the Gerald Marie case, and that investigating judge understands that this link kind of between the common denominator between all of these sexual predators is now gone, but it doesn't mean that the evidence has to be gone. It doesn't mean that this investigating judge can't sit there and continue to research and look into and explore and subpoena and talk to and interview people to kind of get it all together. It is a big web. And just another footnote. This is why my lawsuit against Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche is so important. As I continue to emphasize and stress the international component of Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and others, the international component of this trafficking ring being kind of, I think, the crux of all of this, behind the financing, the money laundering, the ability to fly from country to country, to cross international borders, to bring girls and children across international borders, to take them into places like Zora Ranch and the Virgin Islands and Palm Beach and Manhattan and Paris. I mean, these are all critically a part of the bigger network of this international modeling. But my lawsuit seeks the production of the foreign language documents that have never seen the light of day from the DOJ. And according to Todd Blanche, he gives two excuses, as you will recall. One is it wasn't practicable to translate, which is a bullshit reason. And number two, he also said that Congress hasn't complained about it, so why should we? Which, again, is a big middle finger to the judge in this case, who's told him, I don't give a shit about your it's not practicable excuse. Go ahead and do it. You're already 7 months behind. These foreign language documents that nobody has even seen, guys, nobody has even seen, they could be big, huge keys to being able to continue to link and connect all of these sexual predators and to be able to apply pressure on people like Gerald Marie, who is still alive as of right now of this episode with you. At least Gerald Marie is still alive, and you know who else is still alive? Ghislaine Maxwell. Okay? Ghislaine Maxwell has only been prosecuted for crimes that are specific jurisdictionally to the Southern District of New York. It doesn't mean that she can't be extradited to France to be able to be prosecuted as a French citizen for her conduct against people at large. They don't have to be victims. The victims don't have to be French citizens. Let me be clear. The law is, as long as that's a French citizen, i.e. ergo, Ghislaine Maxwell, she can be extradited back to France. But we needed somebody like Daniel Siad to be able to explain and point fingers and be able to find Jesus and explain what the hell was going on, maybe, right? But now we especially need that investigating judge to be able to make all of these connections. It's pretty wild news. I continue to ask if you have been a victim of Gerald Marie, Jean-Luc Brunel, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell. I would want to know. Please reach out and let me know. I have a way to discreetly connect you with the people here in Paris and in France that can help and work with you to be able to protect you when it comes to the French authorities and others. But I think this is the time when we have to continue to put pressure on even foreign countries to be able to do what they've launched, because our country, our United States Department of Justice, will not be doing it for the Epstein survivors at this point. The only thing they're doing is stonewalling and making up excuses as to why they can't turn over the unredacted documents. Be mad, be outraged, demand accountability. I will continue to report on developments that come as a result of this breaking news. But Daniel Siad, friend, confidant, longtime correspondent, modeling scout and recruiter, maybe even groomer for Jeffrey Epstein, Jean-Luc Brunel, and Gerald Marie, has been found dead in his Parisian home as of Monday night.
Well, there you have it, everybody. Let me know what you think. Subscribe to Katie Phang's YouTube channel. Also, WTF America. Pre-order it right now. The book that I wrote with my brothers. There's maybe a QR code somewhere here. It's called WTF America. Great work, Katie Phang. Such an honor to have Katie Phang on our team. Katie Phang is a true American hero. Make sure you subscribe to Katie Phang's YouTube channel. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
Breaking news right now, my brothers and I wrote a book. It's called WTF America. And well, doesn't that just say it all? It comes out officially this October, but you can pre-order your copy today. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description below.